Hiya bakers, we're working on a bread formula that is for 2 loaves, and this particular iteration is our classic. It involves a pre-ferment that is a levain. Levain means that we used a natural seed, a sourdough starter, to create the levain. This was created the night before. We're ready to go ahead and mix this in. You can mix this any way that works for you, by hand, by mixer, a KitchenAid, a Bosch. In this case, we're going to use the Ankarsrum that was given to us by Bread Beckers. I've got my levain. I have my autolyse. It's been a couple of hours, and we're going to get started mixing. So I want to encourage you, whenever you are mixing, even if you're doing this by hand, go ahead and put the more liquid consistency ingredient in the bottom of the bowl. 2 loaves is a really nice size to do by hand. It's a nice size to do in a KitchenAid, and I think it's going to be really nice here in the Ankarsrum. This is my first time doing 2 in just the Ankarsrum. When you take your autolyse and add it to the bowl, I want you to chunk this up. Chunk it into like racquetball size pieces. So I do not autolyse in the mixing bowl. That's by design. It's because I want the liquid ingredients in the bottom. A batch size of 2, super easy, and not hard to hand mix that autolyse. Just use your bowl scraper and work it around. We have a video on that. All right, let me put this aside. I guess I'll do it here. All right, what's not going in the bowl right now is the salt and the yeast. We're going to add the yeast after we get this mixed up. So what do you see here in the bowl is the levain. That's our pre-ferment in the base, and you see the chunked up autolyse on top. We're going to go ahead and get this started. My Ankarsrum is already set up to be mixed. I have about a finger's width space between the roller bar and the bowl. See another video about using the roller bar, and the dough scraper here on the side. So this is the configuration for mixing. I'm going to go ahead and start my variable speed at 12 o'clock. That's this knob right here. And then we have our on-off, which is also a timer. So when on, your maximum length of time is 12 minutes. I'm not really using the timer in this situation because we're going to go for a consistency. I always start at 12 o'clock, but then begin moving and adjusting the speed as I see things are coming together and I'm not at risk of anything flying out of the bowl. When doing larger quantities, that's really important. We don't really have that much dough involved inside this bowl that things are going to fall out. If I want to help things incorporate, I can use this hinged action and move this bar more interior into the bowl to sweep up anything that's not getting incorporated, and then it will just rest back in its starting location close to the wall. You can see many of the videos for that in the Ankarsrum Original USA or also through Bread Beckers. Okay, while that's mixing, I want to talk a little bit about salt and yeast. So what we did not put in is the salt and the yeast. We intentionally held it back. We're going to add the yeast in at a point when this dough has come together. So we start with this pre-ferment that's really loose, and then we have this autolyse that's really stiff. The goal is we want them to meld together so that we have one consistent feeling dough. All throughout, it's the same density. You don't have any loose bits and you don't have any real firm bits. Once we achieve that, we add our yeast. We get that yeast mixed into that dough. We continue to mix. Our goal is to get more and more gluten development. This is the same thing we would be doing by hand, is that we would continue to mix until we had that gluten development. Once we are getting deeper in that gluten development, we're going to go ahead and add our salt. You'll see this as it's coming together. I just wanted to give you a sort of a roadmap for where we're going. My friend in this process is some water. I like to have water right here by my side because this dough can be sticky, and I want to keep most of it in the bowl. In fact, I want to stop this right now, and with my wet hands, I want to try to show you this consistency difference, all right? So we have pieces of this mix that are really quite loose, still the bulk of the pre-ferment. And then we have other pieces of this that are knobby. These are those racquetball sized pieces that are yet to get mixed in throughout. And we also have on our beater here more of the loose bits. Our goal, one consistent feeling dough. So we're just going to keep this going. And I'm going to move my speed up. I top my Ankarsrum out at around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And if I feel like that mixing or kneading action is going a little slow, I might readjust the difference, the spacing between the roller bar and the bowl, and narrow it a little bit just by loosening this up and tightening it back down. I'll show you how I do that when I pause it next. The amount of time this takes varies. It can vary by how long you auto-leased your dough. So if you went for a shorter auto-lease, say 30 minutes, it could take much longer. If your temperatures are warmer, it could take less time. The distance of that roller bar to that bowl, so how much of that kneading action is actually happening in that pinch point between the bowl and the roller bar, that affects things. So a number of factors can go into how much time, also how much dough you're working with. The capacity of this bowl would allow us to do 6 loaves. However, that takes much longer to mix than just 2 loaves. I think the other day we did 1 loaf, and that 1 loaf took 15 minutes. In contrast, the 6 loaves, start to finish, about 30 minutes. Okay, this is coming together. I don't have the different densities any longer, all right? That's what we were going for. No more density difference. I do want to adjust this bar a little bit closer, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab my towel and tighten that down just a little bit without over tightening, and we're ready to add our yeast. So I'm going to turn this back to 12 o'clock. It's a good idea to start this at the slowest speed. Turn it back on. I don't really care what the time says because we're just doing this together and we're going for a specific quality. But that said, I'm going to add my yeast just down here in the bottom of the bowl. We want to get that incorporated. As we get closer and closer to achieving strong or medium, we'll say medium gluten development versus strong, we're going to use the salt to help tip the scale towards strong gluten development. That was a tip that I learned from Mel Derbyshire at Grand Central Baking. She's the head baker there. She's been baking bread for them for 20, 30 years. We're talking 60, 70,000 loaves a day. This gal does know her way around dough. And when we were working here in the test kitchen together, she recommended holding the salt for just this reason. It allows you to witness, see that finishing gluten development and push it over the edge. Oh yeah, she's moving right along. let's do a window pane just to see where we're at. Okay. Feels good. Dough is definitely strong, has some buckiness. Look, it's not tacky. Well, of course, we haven't added the porridge, which has the honey and the olive oil in it, but it's coming along. I did feel just a little bit of yeast in this, so just a little sandy. We want that not to be the case, and we want the salt goal will be the same. Speaking of animal companions, my lab is to my left and just did a big sigh. Tough day for yellow lab. All right, you can see this dough is developing gluten. It's got some strength to it. We're not there. It can be stronger, but we're making progress. So this is also a good time to mention that you can mix up your mixing. You do not have to do the whole process in just one method. You could start it by hand and finish it off in the mixer. You could start it in the mixer, pull it out and decide you're not quite there, and finish it off with a few slap and folds, tightening up your dough. In this case, we're just going to keep it right here. She's off. Because I did feel some good development occurring, I'm going to go ahead and add my salt now. I'm going to throw this in on the bottom. All right, there we go. All the salt is in, the yeast is in. I want you to see what's happening with this dough, with this Ankarsrum. This is a different mix method than the KitchenAid. In the KitchenAid, you're looking for that dough ball, and that dough ball is moving. In this case, we are achieving better gluten development, and you're looking for more of a donut around the roller bar. So that's a good sign. I like what I'm seeing. In the formula, there are time ranges indicated, and I really want you to think of them as a range and not an exact amount of time. What I'm hoping that we do as a volunteer force, as a baking force, is we're building our better bread skills. We're looking for the same quality. So what we're looking for here, when I stop this, is can I pull a strong window pane? What's a strong window pane mean? Well, it means that it's slightly bucky, that like a rubber band that you're trying to stretch out, it's pulling or resisting that pull. So it's got a little tension to it as you try to pull it apart. I'm also checking to see if the dough, if I can feel any salt. So again, water is your friend. I've got some right here, and I'm pulling this sample, and you can see, I'm not being overly dramatic here, I hope. You can see that this dough has some strength to it. Absolutely, I can make a hole, but it's not coming quickly or easily. This to me is in the zone. I could finish it off by hand, or I could just keep it going for just a few minutes longer. And I'm going to choose to just keep it here in the bowl and finish it off. So starting again at about 12 o'clock. Once we have the window pane, I'm going to go ahead and add the oatmeal. And our goal with the oatmeal is for it to get incorporated evenly, smoothly throughout the dough. There are multiple ways to a really good loaf of bread. There's no one size fits all. If you have been used to adding your yeast and salt at the same time, and that works for you, or if you add your yeast, salt, and your oatmeal or your porridge at the same time, and that works for you, go ahead, do that. Separating these steps out has some rationale behind it, and so if you're just getting started, I recommend that you do that. But you can get a delicious loaf in multiple mixing ways. This is just one to help us get started. Okay, I'm going back up to about 430 with this little dough ball, and we're going to give it maybe 2 minutes, and then we'll come back, take a look, okay? Okay, it's been another 2 minutes. Let's just check in on this dough, see if it's ready for the porridge. You can see the consistency is very dough ball like, nice and round, very bucky. Got some nice tightness. I've moistened my hands. I can see this, how this window pane is doing, and yeah, it's coming right along. Actually, even though I like this, I'd like it to go a little longer. I'm gonna let this go another, we're gonna give it another 2 minutes, and then we should be ready to add that porridge, right? Okay, bakers, I'm gonna turn this off. It's actually been another 4 minutes. I want to check the consistency again of this dough. Now I don't feel any salt, which is gratifying. We still don't have our porridge in here. One of the things that I like about being able to leave this mixer is I can get ahead on the dishes while we're mixing. This already feels better. I'm glad that I went a little longer. It's extremely challenging to overmix a dough. What it will look like if you overmix is that the cell structure of the starches will release all the water that has been trapped in the gluten. It will become very ropey, and it will, the dough, it will not be recoverable. So if you do achieve an overmix, which is no small feat, it just doesn't happen. You can YouTube it and see. A number of bread geeks have gone and gone and gone to see how long it will take. But this is beautiful gluten development. It's strong, it's ready, and we just added more time, and we're done. We're done with that piece. Now we need to add our porridge. Depending on the quantity of dough that you are mixing, you might want to add your porridge in stages. This is all going to fit in the bowl just fine. We're going to remember to start this mixer at the 12 o'clock at the lowest speed, just to prevent items from flying out. When you're working with larger quantities, you might want to add your oatmeal, your porridge in increments, like half at a time or a third at a time. So I'm going to turn this on. Again, start at 12 o'clock, but it's not going to go flying off the bowl. I'm going to go ahead and move this up in speed. We do not have to do that window pane test again. We're done with the window pane test. Now what we want, when we check the dough, we're going to check to make sure that that oatmeal is deeply woven in. No big pockets of porridge are separate from the dough. Just one cohesive mass, okay? It's going to take a minute or two. We'll let this go, and we'll come back when it's done. Okay, we're back with our 2 loaf classic. We've added the oatmeal, and I can see, I'm going to slow this down, I can see that it's well incorporated. This has been another 2-3 minutes, and at about a 4 speed. And I'm going to go ahead and turn her off. And I'm going to, I can see that it's very even. I'm going to scrape off our bowl scraper. Set this aside. Release the pin. Release the arm. Whew, it does get sticky. Okay, release. Take our roller out. With the addition of the oatmeal porridge, the olive oil, and the honey, of course, this dough becomes tackier. But as it goes through its bulk ferment stage, it's going to lose that tackiness. So we're going to empty this. These bowl scrapers certainly come in handy for this process. Move this out into a bowl. We're going to let this bulk or rise to about 1.5, 2 times. We're going to do a fold at about 30 minutes, about halfway through. Keep an eye on it. You don't have to baby it, but keep an eye on it. I'm going to cover this. Really like the way that that dough looks, feels. Set this aside for that bulk and see you back for that fold.